inviting all of us here to speak before we do that. A little bit about myself. I'm a former educator in the city of Norfolk. I taught math and science to 7th and 8th graders before deciding to go to medical school. I graduated from medical school in 1989 and then completed an internship in internal medicine at Eastern Virginia Medical School and then a 3-year residency in psychiatry. So I've been practicing psychiatry in the city of Chesapeake for the last 28 years and I've been practicing for about 35 years in total. In 2018, I was elected by the city to serve on the Chesapeake School Board, where I served for 4.5 years. It was the pleasure of my life. I worked with a group of great people who today are still good friends of mine. And I'm running for city council because I'm not finished serving yet. I'm on a mission to serve the people of this city and to make this city a better place for all of us. Thank you. Happy to be the Chesapeake Candidate.
Thank you, Ms. King. Ms. Naparella.
Thank you so much, and also for this opportunity to speak. I'm Jennifer Naparella. I have been a teacher with Chesapeake Public Schools for the last 23 years, high school. In addition to teaching, my two biggest passions are community groups that I'm working with are the Chesapeake Education Association, where I serve on their executive board, and the Chesapeake NAACP chapter, where I serve on the executive board and as the chair of their education committee. Going forward, I intentionally decided to run for office without asking for a party recommendation because I am goal-oriented and I was encouraged by friends that I deeply respect to run because of my ability to bring people together and to overlook differences and focus on solutions. So to that end, I decided not to try for a party endorsement and just run as myself. I hope that you will consider looking at my website, jenniferknapp.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ray.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for the invitation. It's a wonderful opportunity. I live way on the other side of the city in the Fentress area, but it's an honor and a privilege to also be responsible to each and every person across the city. I come from a Navy Gold Star family. My husband and I came here when he got orders to a nuclear cruiser out of Norfolk, and through a number of circumstances we stayed, mostly because, and I'm going to take this from Mayor West, this is a big city, but it always feels like a small town. So we worked very hard to get there. I'm proud to be a part of a group that has led Chesapeake to be named the best managed city in Virginia, and look forward to your questions and hope that you'll get out there. Not only will you vote, but bring as many people as possible to voice their opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Staples.
Hi, I also want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and to the Hampton Roads Black Caucus for sponsoring and putting this event on. Events such as these are vital to my campaign because I don't take any corporate donations, and I will, this is one of the free ways I can get the word out. So I've long been a community activist in our city and in across Virginia. I'm a fighter for social and environmental justice. The needs of the people are my first concern. I'm a fighter, and I am free from party constraints and the infighting that embroils both of these represented political parties. The needs of the people are my first concern, and I look forward to your questions, and you can find out more about me at jeffforchesapeake.com. Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you for doing this. You know, several decades ago, former city manager Clarence Coffey coined the phrase, Chesapeake's a city that cares. And every time I hear that, it's very, very personal to me. I grew up in the Great Bridge area, which was Norfolk County at the time, and we did not have, my family was not a family that was affluent, and we had many, many challenges. Had it not been for principles, pastors, teachers, and people in this community, I would not be standing here today. So I know in a personal way that regardless of what you say you want to do, you have to have a heart to do this job, and I believe that God's given you that heart.
Thank you. And Mr. Ray.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. My name is Eric Ray, and I'm running for the Chesapeake City Council. I'm here tonight to ask you for your vote. Thank you so much for this fine opportunity for us to be here tonight. Who is Eric Ray, and why is he running? I want to join this great city council. I served out of the United States Armed Forces in the Navy as a yeoman. I'm a small business owner. I'm a field director. I own the Yvonne Ray Funeral Establishment. We've been in business 8 years, and we have just been voted again for the 6th time in a row best funeral home in the city of Norfolk. I'm running on 3 passionate reasons. One, I want to make sure that we adequately fund our budget and our priorities such as police, school, fire, rescue without burdening you, the taxpayer. Second, I want to be open for business. I want Chesapeake to be open for business, streamline the process for new businesses to come and join us here in Chesapeake, and infrastructure. We need to fix our roads. We need to fix our infrastructure. We have a great council. I want to join that council. Again, I'm Eric Ray, and remember all the way with Eric Ray to election day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. So as a reminder, this is a forum, not a debate. And so we ask that the candidates not address each other. Our purpose is simply to help the public be more informed about your views on key issues. And to the members of the audience, I know we're all excited to be here, but you'll have your chance to ask questions when we transition into an informal session later this evening. So please do not call out or interrupt our candidates. I reserve the right to start the clock again if a candidate is interrupted. And to stay on schedule, please hold your applause until the end. So we do want to respect our candidates' time. So now we'll get started. I'll ask the timekeeper to put 1 minute on the clock, and Mr. Waters has our first question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, candidate. Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Sit on.
Can the audience hear?
Yeah, the lights on. Okay, yeah, go ahead. She's got
Okay, all right, you hear me okay? Thank you. Thank you, candidate. We move to our questions, starting with property tax. Residential property assessments have risen steadily over the past decade, driven by increasing market values and property sales. While Chesapeake has kept its property tax relatively stable, increasing assessments mean that homeowners are paying more in taxes. For example, from 2021 to 2022, assessments saw a significant increase, with many properties rising in value from 10 to 15%. Even if the tax rate remains the same, a 10% increase in assessment leads to 10% rise in property tax bills. For many residents, especially those on fixed incomes, are in economically vulnerable positions. These increases are difficult to manage. Our question is, when city assessments on real estate have significant increases, would you consider working with other members of council to lower the property tax rate to offset excessive tax increases? We'll start with Councilmember Ike.
Thank you, Gene. We just recently last year reduced the tax rate from 105 to 101 in hopes to offset some of the increases in values of homes. What I struggle with is, granted, taxes are going up, but also the price of firefighters, police officers, school teachers, taking care of buildings, infrastructure costs, everything's going up. And if you continue to keep the tax rate so low that the money stays the same, or the revenue stays the same, you can't keep up with the rising cost of everything else. So that means you have to cut services. I understand maybe lower the tax rate a little more to kind of level it out, but city expenses are doing nothing but rising. So the revenue needs to rise as well. My solution to that is not more taxes, but more taxpayers. We need more industry and commercial manufacturing in the city, which is a much bigger tax base than residents.
Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you. I can tell you in advance, my answers would sound very similar to the one that was just provided. I think this has got to be a variable look at a singular problem. Housing is going to continue to increase in value. We know that. They're not making more land, so therefore prices are going to go up. Prices of everything are going up. Now, to answer your question, absolutely, I'm open to the conversation of lowering that tax. I think you have to be open to all conversations. However, I think the solutions are found in variable streams of income to the city increasing, attracting new businesses, making it easier for existing businesses to grow, therefore offsetting the expenses of the city. Rather than looking at one singular problem and one singular solution, I think there are other options available within the city to offset those increases, and we can take care of the people who are under such a terrible crunch with inflation, the economy, and housing.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. King.
Well, I think that's a great question. Our property taxes are strangling the people of Chesapeake. I think we have to attract more businesses to try to offset the cost. This city has a multi-million-dollar surplus every year. And I think that money needs to be returned to the people in the form of a tax break, so they can buy groceries and pay their mortgages, and pay their health insurance, and all the other things that they need.
Okay, Mrs. Naparella.
Thank you. I do want to add, one thing that is not going up are our incomes, and we need to keep that in mind. I'm a regular working class person who almost lives paycheck to paycheck, so when these incremental tiny little tax increases happen, I'm pulling from a pot that doesn't get bigger. So yes, I am open to looking at property taxes. There is one, I know it's not going to be popular with the business folk, but as a way of attracting young people, working class people to Chesapeake, we need to consider the option of collective bargaining for our city workers so that we can secure in our contracts incomes that may or may not at least have a chance of keeping up with the cost of living. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Ritter.
Thank you. In 2002, I think the council erred in having a temporary 4-cent tax decrease, which then meant the budget that we got last year was based on the tax rate going back up. Had that not happened, we could have lowered real estate tax even more. So we should always look at that. Just because the lowest tax and fee burden of any city in the region, but that doesn't mean much to you or to me when we sit down and write those checks. So we should always look to set the most important priorities and stick to the priorities. Don't do too many nice to haves when we have needs to have. And I know my time's running out, but another goal I would have is to look and see if we can do something about the personal property tax rate on cars and vehicles. Thank you.
Mr. Staples.
Thank you. Yes, I would agree to cutting the rate some to help people like me stay in my home. That would be great. So the reason for all of this increase in taxes and appraisals and everything is because simply we're overdeveloping the city way too fast. We need to calm that down, and overdevelopment causes increases in needs for city services. I had a paramedic tell me that they are just running crazy with overtime because of all the new rest homes that have been built in our city, and they are having terrible overworking situations. So that means we have to hire all kinds of new people to run these services to handle the development. And yes, I will try to help with taxes. Thank you.
Mayor Wentz.
I think the real question, Gene, is what kind of city, what do you want your city to look like? Do you want it to be an acceptable place to live, learn, work, and play, or do you want to be an okay city? And I think people have said it already, that there are other ways, and there are certainly other ways of creating revenues to keep the tax burden low. And as Ms. Ritter said, we're already one of the lowest, and certainly open for trying to keep it even lower as we can continue to work with our economic development, bring businesses, we can bring revenues in different ways. But yes, I think there's always has to be a balance between what you're collecting and what you're paying. But then you also have to think about, and that's what we think about as we pass those budgets, what are our priorities? And we are very, very purposeful about meeting those priorities and asking what kind of city we want to be in the future.
Mr. Ray.
I don't think anyone's going to stand there and say that we're going to raise taxes. So I don't think anybody is going to make that. But I think we need to also be creative as far as, you know, if you look at the comp plan, our great city manager says that we have a 4-step process, and the last step in that process is to raise taxes. So the council has been very good, very efficient on not doing that. We've got blighted properties, and I think that some of our blighted properties, we might need to take a look at the zoning. Some of those blighted properties should be mixed use, and that's one creative way that I've been talking with others to make sure that that can actually be put on the table as well. One of the things that I think that is so important is that we're not burdened with taxes and fees, and it's just not being overburdened with that. So I think, just like Rick said, what kind of city do we want to live in? I think we want to be a great city, and I'm looking forward to the future. And I think that one of the greatest things that we do now automatically is we do things without burdening the taxpayer. So I would certainly work with our council, and you have to have good people on council to do that.
Councilman Carey.
I was starting to feel left out. Excuse me, sir. So the short answer is yes, I am open to looking at ways that we could balance the tax rate with the funds that we're expending. One of the 3 pillars of council is to be fiscally responsible, viable in the future, and I've been dedicated to that since coming on council in 2020. I also think it's important that your leader looks at the rate of increase or decrease in which the property the tax rate is going, and we see now within the city of Chesapeake for the first time that the rate of increase of the property tax is decreasing. We haven't had that since recession, so we have to be very careful with what we're doing with that tax rate because there's some sort of market reset coming soon. So I have to make sure we're working with the citizens to set our priorities and continue to be streamlined as we are now. And I will always continue to work with them to make sure we have an effective tax rate that it's not too overburdensome for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Carey. And Ms. White has our next question.
Good evening again. The Comprehensive Back Bay Coastal Storm Risk Management Plan, developed by the Army Corps of Engineers, focuses on Virginia Beach and includes portions of Chesapeake and Norfolk, excuse me. Norfolk requested the Army Corps of Engineers to conduct a separate study in Norfolk, which resulted in a detailed plan tailored to its needs with cost estimates. This plan will assist Norfolk in securing funding for flood protection projects. Our question today is, would you support a request to the Army Corps of Engineers to conduct a flooding study for our neighborhoods hardest hit? Hardest flooding. And we're going to start with Mr. Councilman Pike, I'm sorry.
I hate being first on all these, but I'm happy to. I would certainly support Corps of Engineers coming and doing a major study on our flooding areas and basically what needs to be done to correct it and get us on a plan. I believe it was back in 2003 we had a major study done back then, but not a whole lot of movement has been made on that. We've got a lot of ditches in Chesapeake. A lot of them are clogged, a lot of them are overgrown. They actually have trees growing in the middle of them. I actually walked one about 6 weeks ago, and there was literally a tree growing right in the middle of the ditch. We have to clean our ditches. The water's got to flow through. At one point, we did have the sheriff's department had crews that would go out and clean ditches. I guess we're not doing that anymore. We do need to pay attention to that. The more impervious spaces we put up, rooftops that don't absorb ground runoff, the water's got to go somewhere. One thing that we're doing that I'm real proud of is all the new projects they have their stormwater retention ponds, which keeps all their water on their property.
Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you for the question. The short answer is yes, I would support the study, but with that said, I don't know that it would be necessary. I can tell you that I've been the one who's been wading through the water during these floods and helping people out of their homes. And it's pretty consistent areas around the city that are in need. It's not that difficult to identify. We have a long track record and a pretty consistent pattern of failure as it comes to that water getting out efficiently. But Army Corps, they are the experts, that we probably couldn't glean additional details that would be beneficial. But let's just be honest, the real question is, don't our citizens deserve it? These are the basics. You work your whole life to purchase a home, it's the American dream. The burden is on us to make sure that that home is safe.
Thank you. Mrs. King.
The answer is definitely yes. I'd like to see the city move in the direction of protecting the environment, not just when it comes to flooding, which is an issue and it's going to be a worsening issue over time. But I'd like to see the city make the environment a priority across the board, which starts with bringing back curbside recycling. As a physician, as a former earth science teacher, I understand the intricacies of the environment and our health. And so it's going to be a matter of our priorities. Where do we think we should be putting our money? And I think the environment is definitely a place that we should invest in. So I would be in favor of that study.
Ms. Navarelli.
Thank you. I too would be in favor of bringing in the Army Corps of Engineers. The neglect of neighborhoods like Pewsville over the years is inexcusable. And the reason, part of the reason it has been able to go on so long is the way that we cast our votes in Chesapeake. Our at-large system makes it almost impossible for us to bring in anyone from a marginalized group that doesn't represent the majority belief. So a fix, a consideration for a fix, would be a big picture idea, like bringing in single member voting so that we can elect members who are devoted to our area. If we have somebody who's not doing their job, it will be easier to replace them once we shift to single member voting. Thank you.
Ms. Ritter.
Thank you, Ms. White. I certainly would support a study by the Army Corps. I would hope we would all live long enough to see the results. Studies tend to take quite a long time. But we have identified areas in the city that suffer from severe repetitive flooding, and they should be addressed first. And we're making significant investments in new equipment and additional people to help with that in those areas. I do think the new development standards have helped quite a bit in that, it's hard for us regular people to understand this concept of 100-year storms. It really has to do with the amount that falls and where it floods. So I think there's a lot that we can do, and the study would probably be quite helpful. Thank you.
Mrs. Staples.
Thank you. Again, we have brought a lot of this on ourselves. A lot of the overdevelopment causes the water table to rise, and when it rises, it has to go somewhere. And what happens is it usually floods somebody else's neighborhood. So that's a little more low-lying as a result of the fill that gets put on the other neighborhood. So yes, I would definitely support that. There's also studies that we should have done and our neighboring cities have done that we have not done to make sure that we are taking care of our stormwater and other things. These 100-year storms, they're like every 100 days now. So we got to get a grip on this quick. And when this flooding arises in some people's neighborhoods, their property values go down, and they might even lose their septic systems and things like that. Thank you.
Mayor West.
one of the things, if I remember correctly, Norfolk got a huge amount of money, not only for the study, but to help mitigate some of the flooding in Norfolk. And one of the problems when you ask the federal government for money, they tend to prioritize it to those cities that need it the most. And even though they have more places flooding, the places that are flooding in our state are just as bad, but unfortunately we're not as eligible for funds because we have fewer of those places. But we do need to continue to do all that we can to mitigate it. And I don't agree that the building is called flooding. Ever since I've lived in this city, I have seen flooding everywhere, so even as a child. So there we go.
I'm gonna have John Dietrich came on at the moment. Pretty much how much is the study going to cost? Just like Rick just finished saying, you know, unless you're getting it from the federal government, it's going to have a whole bunch of restrictions and guidelines. In Virginia Beach, say the Army Corps of Engineers, you can't get it. It's only one way to Sandbridge. You can't access it from Demo Parkway because the Army Corps of Engineers hasn't yet approved it. So anytime you have, you know, you involve federal government, it's bureaucracy. My answer would pretty much be it would have to be the consensus of council. We have to have discussions on that because if the federal government is not going to pay for the study, it's going to come out of the city budget. Where's the money going to come from, and how much of that is really going to change much of the condition?
Thank you. Councilman Terry.
Yeah, you got it. Well, thank you so much for this question. This has been one of the topics that has been keeping me up at night since I've been doing further study. I'm sad to say that the situation in Chesapeake is now, if it is raining, the potential of flooding has greatly increased. We're dealing with increased flooding threats from tidal flooding coming in both of our rivers, the Northwest River and the Elizabeth River. We're dealing with rising groundwater, and we're dealing with increased rainfall. What was considered a 50-year storm is now being considered a 5-year storm. So I'm definitely in favor of a study, but I don't think we actually need a study. Virginia Beach has done extensive work in this area. The city of Norfolk has done extensive work in this area, and they've put together policies that Chesapeake would just implement those policies and tie them to our comp plan so that they have teeth. We can actually begin to mitigate some of the flooding issues we have within our city. A study is only as good as the will of your council to give it teeth and apply it to a policy that we will adhere to. Thank you.
Okay, our third question is managed growth. To assist in the planning commission and city council decisions, the planning department provides a levels of service plan, which is LOS, to give to each new property rezoning in the city. Our question is, would you approve of a new neighborhood if it has detrimental impact on roads, schools, or public safety services? Mr. Jeffries, we'll start with you.
Sorry, we're going on. So this is the real, I guess, elephant in the room for the city of Chesapeake and what it means for its future. What does residential growth look like? For that specific example, you kind of made it easy. If I know already that it's not hitting the 3 criteria that I would use to make decisions, we're not going to vote in favor of it. It's not good for the community. It's not good for the city. It's not good for the developers. It's not good for the homeowner. How can we approve that? The real question is, how are we going to find the common ground to build and grow as we need to in the future? You know, we have to come up with a formula that accomplishes smart growth. And what you described is not my definition of something that I would support.
Mrs. King.
I definitely would not be in support of developing a neighborhood if it was going to be harmful to people in the community. I think it's very important that we put first things first. And in order to continue to build the city and encourage people to come to Chesapeake to live, we need to take care of the infrastructure that already exists. We have problems with our infrastructure as it is. So before we build another neighborhood, I think we have to address our infrastructure issues. I think we have to work with the school board to address overcrowding in our schools. I think we have to talk about the traffic congestion that results from rapid growth that's not managed and controlled. And we have to think about how it impacts the environment and our overall quality of life. So I think we have to put first things first, and we have to address those issues before we should really consider rebuilding neighborhoods that are going to be harmful to the rest of the community.
Mrs. Naparella.
Thank you. The short answer is no. The reason why is primarily we have overdeveloped already. Southern Chesapeake is getting crushed. And I think candidate Ray mentioned earlier about mixed-use developments. We have this municipal building that's imminently going to be constructed in South Norfolk area. It stands to reason that we would want to revitalize that area being blighted and hopefully provide new opportunities for housing for our residents that doesn't involve new construction or more pressure on our infrastructure. We can work with the infrastructure that we have and lift up communities by looking inward rather than outward for what we can get. So my answer, short answer is no. Long answer, we need to revitalize our blighted communities. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ritter.
Thank you for the question. For my 4 years on the Planning Commission and 24 years on the City Council, my record is clear. It's there. I probably have the record of voting for the fewest number of residential developments of any member of council, because I do consider all of those impacts, not to mention the stress that the development puts on other city services besides our schools and roads. So, yes, the previous council, not the council sitting today, the majority refused to look at the 25-year-old level of service policy and make the changes that need to be made to address what's happening today. I'm building my website. I'm going to be really fast. I'm going to have a quote on there from the United States Court of Appeals dealing with my discussions on the impacts of growth.
Mr. Staples.
Thank you. My answer is going to be absolutely not. You can guarantee that I will be a no vote on any project that comes before council that is going to be in a school zone that is already at capacity, or if that development would put it over capacity. It's ridiculous. We have schools now that are approaching 200% capacity, and we say we're going to get new schools in 3 years. We'll never build a school in Chesapeake in 3 years. It takes much longer than that. There's going to be delays of all kinds. And still, even when they're built, they're going to be at capacity already. So we need to do a lot of building, a lot of infrastructure upgrades before we can ever consider building in conditions like that. It's just not going to happen. Thank you.
Mayor West.
So short answer is yes. No, I would not approve a project that can't meet the level of service. But let me just say, and agree with Ms. Ritter, this whole business of level of service has been something that we've been discussing since I've been on council. I once chaired a committee with all kinds of folks in the community to talk about the proffers that builders were paying. And that became quite a quagmire. We never really came to any conclusions with that. So we really have to be able to understand what level of services is. Can the development perhaps create the infrastructure by doing proffers? And many times that is the case. The Planning Commission may say it doesn't meet the level of service, but the proffer in the development does make that project meet the level of service. In that case, I would go for it.
Mr. Ray.
This is kind of a loaded question because I think every project should be on its own merit. So if it's a bad project, obviously I would go no. If it's a good project, I would go yes. Going back to the mixed use, my proposal is that we have blighted and pretty much they're non-existent things that are in some shopping centers. There's some few things that aren't there. Well, businesses aren't there, and it's kind of abandoned, and some of them look abandoned. I've talked to the developer, and one of the things that we came up with was that maybe if you build something for more neighborhoods, and I'm going to go to our council with this, change first of all the zoning, and then make sure that we can have like a mixed use where there are businesses and their residents on top. Because everybody's complaining about the overdevelopment outside, and the open development, people are coming. So that's something that you cannot stop, but you have to be responsible with the growth. And with that growth being, we already have things that are in place. So some of it is some of the bureaucracy that we kind of need to get rid of, and we need to be creative with what we have already.
Councilman Terry.
Thank you so much for that. I think our level of service policy is horribly outdated. And here's where leadership comes into play. Firstly, if there's a project that fails level of service, then I will vote no. But I think we need to reimagine what we want Chesapeake to look like 30, 40, 50 years down the road and change the level of service policy to allow us to get to that end goal. Here's where having a mayor who keeps the issues that really matter to the people at the forefront. Level of service has never been a priority to council since I've been here since 2020. I've been one of the main ones trying to get it as a priority so we can have Chesapeake be the city that we want it to be, not just today, or not what it has been, but what we plan for down the road. So our level of service policy needs to change to be able to address the issues and the outcomes that we're anticipating within our city.
Councilman Ike.
Well, we are a Dillon rule state, which means we can only do what the state legislature allows us to do. Years ago, they changed a proffer policy where we used to be able to have developments say, hey, you're really going to affect that intersection down there. If you want your project approved, you have to signalize that, or you have to put in turn lanes, or you have to widen that portion of the road. We can't do that anymore. No off-site proffers. We can't ask them for that anymore. Onto the levels of service, especially when it comes to schools. The schools have not rezoned for actually since Hickory High School was built in 2002, I believe it was. And they took a bunch of kids out of Great Bridge and put them into the Hickory schools. We've got schools that are at 70, 80% capacity that are in walking distance from new neighborhoods that are in other school districts, and the school board simply won't rezone because it's not politically correct. We need to put pressure on the school board to make some adjustments to the attendance zones, and I think that will solve a lot of the levels of service when it comes to schools.
Thank you. Our fourth question concerns representation. Members of several communities have expressed feeling overlooked by the city government. When they ask questions about polling places for upcoming elections, stormwater mitigation, and other significant issues, these residents feel they are often passed off to someone else without ever getting clear answers. Our question to each of you: what specific steps will you take to make sure you hear the concerns of every community so all residents will know they are equally represented? We're going to start with Ms. Navarelli.
The first place I would start is by pushing for borough voting systems where we have single member voting. I would agree that we have communities in our city that are overlooked. I don't know if it is intentional or not, but there are certainly large clusters of families, communities that have no voice and they need a voice. I don't see a way around that until we change the way we vote. I will certainly advocate for all people. My door will always be open, just like it is in all of my other areas of my life. But that is a small help until we can get to the big fix, which we absolutely need, which would be shifting our voting system to borough represented districts. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ritter.
Thank you, Ms. White. I think it all comes down to the commitment of a member of council, not single member voting. I don't know why any voter in the city would want to take the representation of 7 people away from them. Single member voting, in my opinion, does not keep you accountable to every person in the city. And that is the commitment that we need from our elected officials. Small example. I probably live the furthest away from here of anyone. I live in the Fentress area, almost to Virginia Beach, and yet I visited the your neighborhood in Pughesville with our entire city staff. And we were able to get $600,000 worth of work done off the budget because it was needed. It was a legitimate concern. But I live in Fentress. So again, it's the commitment of your council member. I keep testing.
Once again. How many statements?
How you doing? Okay, so, yes, I do echo the need for borough representation. I think that's going to be important to getting things done. But also, yeah, open door policy, come talk to me. And I'm not going to be like Mr. Krasnoff and be able to retain all those different city department numbers in my head like he did. But I will actually try to intercede and help people as much as I can. It's amazing. I've been walking the neighborhoods since late July, and people have shown me some amazing things, potholes and sinkholes and ditches that are full and all kinds of craziness. And so, yeah, there's definitely a feeling that some areas are not represented. Thank you.
Now, Wes.
Thank you. You know, there is a shortage of revenues to fix all the problems in our city. And so whatever district you live in, or whatever neighborhood you live in, our streets still need repairing, and flooding needs to be taken care of. I don't think that it's just in one or two or three areas. If you really doubt that you're not being represented, here's a document that's created by our Economic Development Office that shows the amount of money that's spent in 5 or 6 different neighborhoods. And I can tell you, if you look at that, it's hard to argue that the city at large is not being treated fairly. I do believe that Mr. Gooder is right. If we as a council member and a council in general are committed to listening to people, we're going to listen to them. We're not.
Mr. Ray.
Go back to what I said earlier. The council person should possess 3 traits: heart of service, heart of leadership, heart for the people. If you wanted to be confined in one area, this might not be the job for you. First of all, pie in the sky, you can't get it done until you change the city charter. So that's number one. So that's pretty much, that's the law. The second thing is that the way you make sure that you have, I watch this council. This council goes everywhere. Every council member is everywhere. You cannot call a council member, but and not get them. Consider this. If we were in a system, I represent Indian River, it would be called district. I represent that district. There's something that's going on out in Great Bridge. I care nothing about that because at that point now, we're only confined to our one area. If I don't feel that's important, you have other council members that are going to vote against that, but this is something that's very important to you. You don't see eye to eye, which means I'm not accountable to your voters. You have to be accountable to your voters, and in order to have heart of leadership, heart of service, heart of the people, that means you have to be accountable to all the people that you serve, and that's everyone in the city. So my plan is pretty much just go everywhere and be everywhere.
You know, when I first joined council, I was on the at-large voting train. I love the fact that I could go to Western Branch. I love the fact that I can go to South Norfolk. I love the fact that I can go to Hickory and help the people with the issues that they had here. But here's what I learned. I mean, one panelist already mentioned it. Early on in my council, my time on council was brought to our attention that they were dealing with some flooding issues in the area of Pughesville. And when we went out to look at those flooding issues, we found out that they had been dealing with those issues for decades, for a very long time. And one member on council said Pughesville is the area that time forgot. Why? Because the council members who are in charge of the Western Branch or represent the Western Branch area, one of them is a working professional who's been spending most of their time at work, and the other has a schedule that is a ninth wonder of the world. Neither one of those two individuals spend their time in the area where they represent. It's hard to hold somebody accountable for not properly representing you when they're not held accountable to you. We need to move into a ward system. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? It's kind of been muddied up as
You didn't fall asleep, did you?
No, ma'am.
Members of several communities have expressed feeling overlooked by the city government. When they ask questions about polling places for upcoming elections, stormwater mitigation, and other significant issues, these residents feel they are often passed off to someone else without ever getting clear answers. Our question to you: what specific steps will you take to make sure you hear the concerns of every community so all residents will know they are equally represented?
Thank you. I've been a businessman in Chesapeake for 39 years now. I have customers all over the city. I'm traveling all over the city. I enjoy the fact that if somebody calls me from Indian River, where I live, calls me and says, hey, I have a problem. Or what if somebody calls me from Western Branch or Pughesville or Hickory or wherever? I treat everybody the same. I have had so many, I call them Councilman meetings, where somebody will come to me and say, I want this rezoning because I want to carve off 5 acres for my daughter to have a house, up the street from me. Planning says I can't do it. So I'll have a meeting where I bring everyone in staff from the city, from planning, from the city manager's office, from permits and development. And everybody sits there, and my first question is, how do we get to yes? And there's no pointing fingers each way. You got to go to planning, you got to go to development. And we find an answer. That gentleman got his 5 acres for his daughter. It's problem solving. I really don't have a concern with what part of the city you live in. I'm available.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I think it really boils down to a word that's been repeated regardless of the solution that's been proposed, and it's commitment. Over 2 decades ago, I raised my hand on a sworn oath to serve and protect all of the citizens of Chesapeake. I don't care your address, I don't care your age, your gender, your nationality, your race, your religion. All means all, and that's who we serve. And I would rather have 9 people accountable and 9 phone numbers to call than just 1. That's just me personally. I believe the goal of the ward system is honorable. I have been researching it so I can have an intelligent discussion on it. I haven't found a city yet that's implemented it that's been doing as well as Chesapeake. Certainly not a city that's voted the best run city in the state. I haven't found it, but if anybody can send it to me, I'm open for discussion on it. But at this point, it's interesting to me that the voters have achieved almost the ward system organically. Realize that we have members of council in Western Branch, in Deep Creek, in Greenbrier, in Hickory, in Great Bridge. We don't have an elite class from one little small portion of the city representing you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. King.
Well, I'm going to agree with a lot of what's been said. I think it's sad that there are citizens who live in the city who feel that they're overlooked and that their voices aren't heard. Because as it stands, every single council member, all 9 of them, are responsible for every single citizen in this city. And so if we have needs that aren't being addressed, that's very sad. When it comes to the single member voting district, I see where it could have some advantages, but that does not excuse the fact that today, as it stands, with a city at large, every citizen's needs should be met and every citizen should be heard. So it's a matter of commitment, and it's a matter of who you elect and how committed they are to serving the city, which they are obligated to serve.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, and y'all have been so good with managing your time. We actually have time for one more question. And this one will actually help wrap up. And so our final question to you is, what are your most important goals if you are elected to City Council? And this time we will start with Ms. King.
Well, the first thing on my agenda will be to reinstate curbside recycling. I think it's important for citizens to participate in protecting the environment, and that is a huge issue for me. I'm really concerned about not having mental health beds in the city. As a psychiatrist, I know that there are people every day in the city who need acute care, and we do not have a single mental health bed for people who suffer from mental illness or chemical dependency. And as it is, they wait in the emergency room for days waiting for a bed to be treated in another city. And I think in 2024, with the mental health needs that we have, that is completely unacceptable. The city growth that we talked about earlier, that's a big priority for me because it does affect our quality of life, our schools, education, infrastructure, just quality of life issues in general. And I'm concerned about the property taxes because I see how it is strangling our citizens, and I think we have to find a solution to the personal property tax issues that we face. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Naparella.
Thank you. As a teacher, I boiled my platform down to its essential three, the ABCs. A would be affordable housing. We have people, working class people are getting priced out of Chesapeake. If we want to remain viable, if we want to encourage business, we have to have people to perform work. We don't want to have people coming in constantly when we can cultivate that community here in Chesapeake. The B, borough representation. To me, my commitment is 100% to my position on city council, but I still feel concerned about my ability to serve all 250,000 people. And 3, collective bargaining. This might be an issue for a couple generations from now, but the economy, when Zenith moved to Mexico, that economy got taken over because of our presence, and the folks' quality of life was driven down. With Greenland coming into Chesapeake,
Time.
thank you.
Councilwoman Ritter.
Thank you. My priorities are the priorities I hear from our citizens. They want a safe city. They want their children and grandchildren It's critical to the character of our city. It's something that people cherish about the city. So grow where we can support the development with infrastructure, make sure we preserve agriculture in our open space, and be sure we listen carefully to what people in the city want. That's how you set priorities. The vision doesn't come from that dais. A vision should always come from the citizens. Thank you.
And Mr. Staples.
Okay, my first priority that I want to talk about is schools. Again, we don't have enough of them, and it's getting worse all the time. We got to get a school program on target there to improve this condition. Also, redevelopment. We can redevelop a lot of areas and get affordable housing. I was at one council meeting where it was suggested that $380,000 townhomes were affordable. It's ridiculous. Another way we can help out the people that live in one area and the jobs are in another area is by increasing our transit capabilities. Right now, we have a double the unemployment rate in one area than the other, and there's no way for them, the people, to ride the bus to get to a job. That's ridiculous in our city. Thank you.
Mayor West.
I've been fortunate enough to visit regions of the Chamber of Commerce like in Charleston and Charlotte, Denver, and that have been very successful in creating an environment that provides quality of life for their citizens, and they did it through economic development. So my dream is economic development. We already have a wonderful program. We have more international companies than any other city in Hampton Roads. We have growing businesses every day. Green League underwater cable just came to me, jobs and money. The economic development opportunity that we have in southern Chesapeake called Williams Farm, coastal Virginia, I've seen the return on investment. It will bring swimming pools. It will help us replace roads. It will take care of many of the needs that we're talking about now that we don't want our taxpayers to pay anymore for economic development.
Mr. Ray.
Certainly, echo the mayor's comments that he just took my time. But great question. I'm glad you asked that. One of the things that I want to look at is I covered one. I want to look at pretty much the shopping centers. I want to look at the zoning for mixed use. I also want to take a look at the streamline the process for businesses as they come into the city for their processing time for when the time gets to the planning department, as the time when it gets to construction. So I want to streamline that. The last thing, and this is the first time I've heard this, if you hear this again, it came from me, I hope you report on. I want to have a partnership with Hampton University. 106,000 men die of prostate cancer every year. And the only proton therapy center is over in Hampton. We have a lot of people. Cancer is not a black or white thing. It's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's a safety thing. And it's a real big issue. And I've already been in contact with Hampton University. So we want to take a look at this and doing something because they have to go 44 days and have to go every single day. And going to Hampton traffic, fighting that traffic is abysmal. We should have that here in Chesapeake, and that's what I'm going to fight for.
And Councilman Carey.
So one of the reasons I ran for council is because I was tired of complaining. Since I've been on council, I've been on the front lines of workforce development. I've been on the front lines of working within the northern part of our city to bring solutions to the crime that we're dealing with there. And I think that your mayor should have the ability to, number one, protect the gains made by previous generations of councilmen mayors, but also put your finger on the issues that your city is dealing with today and adequately plan for answering those issues with solutions for tomorrow. And I have not seen that. I mentioned it earlier, my priorities would be, number one, maintaining the gains we've had in public safety and education, but also working towards affordable housing within our city. We need to diversify the type of housing that we have to include that missing middle, the triplex, duplex, condos, townhomes. We're one of the worst cities in Hampton Roads for first-time home buyers. I want to make sure we move to equal. Thank you.
Councilman Light.
Good to be last. Greenbrier is the economic engine of our city. It provides so much revenue for the city that it's unmatched in the region. The Coastal Virginia Commerce Park, or the Williams Farms, 4,000 acres that we're rezoning for industrial and manufacturing. That's going to be the second economic engine of Hampton Roads. That will bring in a ton of revenue. That's what I want to do. I want to increase the amount of revenue from the commercial side, not the residential side. But this all boils down to a safe city. As a former police officer, and I'm sure Captain Jeffries will echo this, you can have the greatest restaurants, rec centers, schools, but if you're not safe, who wants to live here? We need to, and I have put forward a new pay plan for our police department, which stopped the people leaving our police department for other departments, and hopefully we'll increase our members in the police department up to full complement.
And Mr. Jeffries.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I can tell you that for me it boils down honestly to three things. One, to the point that Mr. Eggers eloquently made, it doesn't matter how beautiful your businesses are, how nice your homes are. If you have to look over your shoulder when you're walking from the restaurant to the car, we failed you as a city. We have to continue to invest in our first responders. The leadership of this council brought forth the best pay plan in Hampton Roads, have stood behind it, have repeatedly continued the commitment to fund it, and I will obviously work towards that and support that going forward. Second, why do people come to Chesapeake? A, our safety record, but really the schools. We've got to invest in attracting the best teachers, the most qualified people, and retaining them. I think we need to address compression issues with the pay within the schools, and both of those missions are going to be accomplished in economic development. This city has got to be the place that businesses desire to come. We want a waiting list of businesses to get in while we help the existing businesses that we have flourish and grow. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Okay, so that was our final question. And I have to say, I realized the only person I forgot to introduce when I went through all my notes was myself. So for those of you who don't know me, yeah, it's me. My name is Karen Greenhall. I'm the Executive Director of Civic Innovations, which was just founded this year. It's a nonpartisan nonprofit intended to help connect people with their government so they can take part in the processes and procedures that affect their everyday life. And this is a good example of what I do. I run with Hampton Roads Black Caucus for years. So we did this together, and I reached out to every single civic group in Chesapeake. Y'all got a lot of really concerned citizens. And it's just been such an honor to take part in this. And I want to thank all of the candidates for their participation. I was a member of the House of Delegates, so I know what it's like to hold a seat, run for office, hold down your job, and I very much appreciate your time. So if y'all don't mind, can we give them a round of applause? And I'll thank our moderators and our timekeeper. Thank you very much. And is Ron still here?
He stepped outside.
Okay, well, I was going to ask Ron if he wanted to say a few words. We have cookies. We have cookies and refreshments in the back. Hopefully the candidates will stay. And you'll have an opportunity to ask your own questions and give them an opportunity to answer. And thank you so much. And we'll just adjourn to the back. Thank you very much.
That was great.